Hi, I'm Anthony from City Backyard Veggies. Start of August now, and it's time for me to get my bush beans started to be planted out in a few weeks time. But before I do that, I am going to be doing a little bit of harvesting in my brassica patches, specifically my cabbages. And just behind me I've got my patch of about 30 cabbages. And to show you my cabbage patch, here it is. This was planted, if I've got to go back from my records, probably in late April. The variety is called Green Coronet, and I got 30 plants in total. Now, they are at different varying sizes, as you can see. Some small ones just starting to turn up here, but as we go further along the patch, you can see there are a few nice heads that are ready to go. Now, generally speaking, these cabbages should have been ready a month and a half ago. But the fact that they've been planted in this slightly shady spot, the avocado and the lemon tree really shaded this whole area. They just really struggled to get any sunlight in the main growing part of the season. So they are a bit behind. But now as the weather's starting to warm up, the days are getting longer, they are going to start heading up pretty quick, and are now starting to run the risk of them splitting. But Mum's asked for a few cabbages. She wants to make stuffed cabbage rolls, so I'm going to be harvesting, having a look. Got a few nice ones up front here. This one here is by far the largest. I'm actually just having a feel of the head just to see how tight it is. Look, it's tight enough. It could have done with another week or so growing. Going to be harvesting that first head, and potentially this one here. It's a bit smaller, again much smaller than the one at the front, and again but feeling quite firm. So be harvesting those two heads and taking over to the parents. Over to the first head, and just going to break back the leaves. Not overly large, but that's okay. Looks beautiful. There you go, not overly large, but perfect for what I need. Over to my second head, and I'm just going to, again, this one's quite a small one, but it's fine. Again, just be covering these into stuffed cabbage rolls. Again, a little bit of slugs, and I'm just concerned that if you leave them too long, they'll get into the head, but they look okay. Gonna give them a clean up. Show you on a haul. So this is my haul. Not overly large, not overly weighty, but glad to get some cabbages out of the patch. It's just, yeah, it's been a weird season for cabbages. Last year I had a lot more success. I had planted them in a different position, in a more fully sun position, and I had planted them a bit earlier. These were planted quite late. I've got to check my records, but I believe they were like really late April, early May. Cabbages, ideally you want to plant them in late March, early April, to really take the benefit of that heat and the sunlight during the early part of their growing season. But happy that these are here. Love that I'm able to get a few cabbages for dinner. Take them inside, give them a clean, take them to Mum's, and I'll go start planting my bush beans. Out in the patch this afternoon, there's been a bit of a lull in the rain that we've been having over the last few days, so I've decided it's time for me to come through and start my bush beans seedlings. Today I'm going to be actually starting my jade bush beans. These are a French green bean variety, and I'm going to use it just to populate this 96 cell tray. I like to get my bush beans started off in punnets. Now it's actually just a bit too cold in the soil to get any germination from beans, but having them in trays, having them indoors, they should germinate absolutely fine. In my gardens, I've got a really strong preference to planting bush beans as opposed to climbing beans. I find it's just easier in my context to deal with it. I don't have to provide much in terms of trellising for them. I also find that bush beans tend to produce big amounts at one time, and you probably can get up to 2 to 3 flushes from them, but it gives you a chance to actually process all those beans at the same time and put them in the freezer for use in winter. Now, my go-to variety for green beans is jade bush beans, and I've been growing them for the last 3 seasons in my patch, and I really like this variety because it actually puts out a really long green bean. It's actually a very elegant looking bean, and it's quite disease resistant. I find it doesn't get too much bean rust, and it produces really well, produces long beans, about that 15 to 19 centimeters long in some cases, and it gives me a really good harvest from start of October all the way till March is when my last planting is. Now when I do plant my bush beans, I do plant them in tight rows at that 40 centimeter spacings, and I plant the plants about 10 centimeters apart in those rows. And you know, especially with seedlings, when I plant these out, I'll be planting these out say late August. I'll be harvesting them by mid-October, so it'd be great to get that green bean vegetable in my kitchen that will replace the broccoli harvest that I'm having at the moment. Now I got these seeds in bulk. I like to buy a lot of my seeds in bulk. Got these ones from Happy Valley Seeds. You can find other online retailers selling them. I prefer to buy in bulk, so I've got half a kilo of seeds at this stage, because I will plant multiple plantings of bush beans throughout the season. I'll try to get at least a planting out once every month to 6 weeks. Now, as with all my seedlings, I will give them a covering of vermiculite, and then they'll be ready to be taken inside to germinate. Now, generally speaking, I like to direct seed my beans. I find that they do better overall if you direct seed your beds rather than planting seedlings. But because I do want to get an early start on bush beans this season, raising the seedlings this way is the only way to get that early start. In addition to my green French beans, I like to grow flat or stewing beans as well, also in the bush bean variety. This variety I like to grow is Italian Romano, and again I've been growing this for the last few years, and it produces a great bean that's perfect for freezing. It's a stewing bean, so you can't eat it steamed. It has to be cooked in casseroles and in stews, but it's very productive, the Italian Romano. The plant doesn't get too big. It slightly vines early in its growth, but it puts out 2 or 3 good flushes of beans during its productive life. These ones are a little bit more susceptible to disease, especially when it comes to overwatering. I do find that the beans themselves will get a little bit of mold if they're in contact with the soil. So the idea is to, when they come to harvest often, harvest daily, harvest often, to limit the damage from any mold. In addition to flat beans and French beans, I also like to grow bush borlotti beans, and the variety I grow is Red Rooster. Now with these, I do not start them in punnets. I don't find they do as well if you start them off in seed trays. These are only direct seeded in the ground. I'll be planting these out direct seeded in October all the way to my last planting in February, and I find that they're really productive. The plants, as long as you have the irrigation onto them and you just let them be, you just keep the weeds down, and they will produce in about that 10 to 12 week period. I find best to harvest them when they're gone red but not completely dried. I shell them and I freeze them in the fridge in those half a kilo bags to be added to soups and stews, and it's a really good producer. Now when it comes to planting the bush beans out into the patch, I find that beans generally do okay in part shade. Actually, I find that they do a lot better than having them in full sun, especially as we start heading into the really hot months here in Sydney. Providing the beans with a little bit of shade from the afternoon sun really helps them to produce to their potential. If they are getting hit with really hot weather, tends to burn their leaves and makes them drop their flowers. So part shade spots is most ideal for them. And what I'm be looking at doing is I'm going to be planting them in this location here. This is the old broccoli patch, and I've got the mango just to the left, and this will provide that little bit of shade from the afternoon sun. That's where I'm going to have allocated that space for my tomatoes, and I was potentially going to bring the tomatoes probably up to this first row here, but I'll be at least planting 3 or 4 rows of my beans just in this corner here, and also in that back part there as those broccolis get moved on. So I'm not going to be planting anything in this space. Once this clears, just turn over the bed a little bit, clean it all up, get my rows formed, and then plant out those seedlings, which hopefully in about 2 to 3 weeks time, hopefully. But at my tomato bed, if you remember earlier on, I'd planted this whole area out with pak choi, and it was planted as small seedlings, individual seedlings at that 5 centimeter spacings. But as you can see, it's filled up the whole space, and this is all getting too big and they need to be harvested. Just pull out one of them. There you go. Beautiful. Just too big, but this is the size that I want. I don't want to go any larger than this. And with all this rain and the longer day light that we've been having, just slightly warmer weather, yeah, Asian greens like pak choi really respond. I did have a later planting over in the back, and you can just see these are 2 weeks apart. These plants were planted 2 weeks after, and you can see they'll be ready to go in that 2 to 3 week period. Lots of slug damage, you can just see. I'll bring it closer. You can just see the slug damage coming in, so I need to put a bit of snail pellets down, but I want to get this crop harvested now to save them from the slugs before they move in and decimate the lot, especially now we've been having a couple of heavy rain days here in Sydney. I've been getting a few more punnets of these ready now that I'm going to be planting out my tomatoes and the like in the garden. I'll be able to plant a bit of choi in between the rows and get that second crop out while I'm waiting for the tomato plants to fill in the space that I'm growing. And I'll be doing that for my eggplants, my capsicums, my tomatoes, and also my cucumbers. I'll be using this technique where I'll be interplanting Asian greens in between those main crops. The rain is just starting to come back down, so I'm gonna have to head in and I'll finish off these harvests once these rains hold off. Just been running in and out of the rain while I'm trying to finish up that harvest. Finally got to it and it's all done now, and I've given them a quick wash. Got a lot of leaves here, a lot of produce. It's close to about 3 to 4 kilos worth of pak choi. That's a lot. I will be halving this amongst my family, and they will take most of this. So good thing about choi is once you cook it, it actually reduces quite a bit, so it's easy to get through it. This will last in the fridge, that 2 week period. I'll just make sure I wrap it up in a paper towel and put it in a closed plastic bag in the fridge, in the crisper, and they will last 2 weeks without getting slimy. I've said this before, I'm a big fan of looking for opportunities to grow additional veggies in my patch to really increase the productivity of my garden. I will be planting choi where I can in the patch all the way up to September, October, when it just gets a bit too hot. But always looking for those opportunities to interplant faster growing plants in between your longer, slower growing crops is a key way I work in my garden to actually increase the overall size of my harvests and try to work on that aim of getting most of my produce that I have in dinner out of my garden beds. And before I wrap up this video, I just want to give you a quick update on where my patch is at the moment. Over at my avocado tree, and the buds are starting to flower, as you can just see that. And we have buds even up here, they've just started flowering. So let's hope that they strike and I get a few fruit off them this year. My third planting of broccoli starting to form heads. We'll be starting to harvest these over about a week or two's time at the most. And with my fourth planting and fifth planting of broccoli starting to put on some size as the days get longer. So looking really forward to getting that crop harvested, and that should be ready to harvest in that 6 weeks time frame as we can move into September. And over to my Brussels sprouts, I think I'll be harvesting these next week. They're actually starting to open up, which is a sign that they're getting a bit too old, and you can just see there they're just starting to spread. So I might have to harvest some of these. See, when this starts opening like that, you find that they've just gone a bit too far. So they're not overly large. I will top these to stop them from growing so these smaller ones can put on some size, and I may individually harvest some of those lower ones, because once they start opening up, it sort of ruins the quality of the Brussels sprout, but yeah, they should be able to move them on pretty closely. And this one here is actually quite large. You can see they're actually really nice, but just starting to see a little bit of rust coming in, but nice sized, like small, like larger than a marble, smaller than a golf ball. And next to them, my second planting of cauliflower. No heads yet, but I'm expecting some to start showing up soon, and they'll be ready to harvest in that 4 weeks time, I reckon, because now again the days are becoming longer, getting about extra half an hour of sunlight a day, you're going to see that the plants really are just going to respond and really boom. So I'll be happy to start harvesting these. And over at the front end of the patch, the main bed, see my lettuces, really beautiful. These ones are going to be ready, cos lettuce are going to be ready in about 2 weeks. I'm going to start harvesting these. Heaps of rain, so you're getting a lot of mud splattering on them, but I'll be coming and harvesting those and taking them over to my parents. There's plenty of beautiful lettuces here, really excited about that. And my Asian greens, my second planting of kale, these are almost ready to be harvested. And the wombox, yeah, you can plant wombox this late in the season and they're just starting to respond, and these will be ready again. I'm expecting 4 weeks. They don't take long to put on a lot of good size. I will hit them with a bit of fertilizer just now, just to make sure they give them that real boost of nitrogen to really get them going. But yeah, excited. They are, you can grow late season wombox, but you do run the risk of them bolting, so you want them to grow fast right now, and lots of nitrogen is the key way to do that. And over at the north facing beds, my coriander, which I seeded, coriander patch which I seeded about 3 or 4 weeks ago, are really coming along. They've all germinated. I've got to come through and weed. Got a little bit of chickweed growing in between them, but that won't be an issue. I'll be able to work through that. My rocket patch is still producing well, and I harvested this last week, so a lot of good leaf matter on it at the moment, but it is starting to bolt. And so I'm expecting, if you could just see closely, I'm not sure if I can see some of the flowers. There you go, little flowers starting to show up, but that's not a problem. What I'll do is I'll pinch them out like that, and it just stops the plant from bolting. But I'll probably get another 3 to maybe 4 harvests out of this. I'll harvest it fortnightly, and I'll probably get another 4 harvests, and then that will be moved on. Over at my parsley patch, and it's all germinated, as you can see. Got my rows. I've got a little bit of cat protection to stop the birds and the cat from getting in there, but really excited. All the seedlings have germinated. And then over to my leeks, they've really responded over the last week, especially to the rains. Looking really, really good. They actually are starting to put on a lot of length, and I'm getting quite excited that I should be able to harvest. I might start harvesting the first few small ones, you know, in about that 3 or 4 weeks time. At this rate, they should be at least pencil thick by then, and we'll start using them. On the seedling front, the tomatoes have all germinated, as you can just see there, just starting on their first true leaves. Likewise, the jalapenos, looking great. They're on 5 leaves now, which is getting really well on the way. They should be ready to be planted out in about 3 weeks time. I've been getting caught out by the rain lately, so I haven't been able to repot these, but I'll be doing these over the next 2 days. Eggplants looking good. I don't need to give them a little bit more fertilizer. And all the other capsicums look great, up to 4 leaves, 5 leaves, and they're really in desperate need of being potted up. And then finally, over at my overwintered jalapenos, they are starting to put on new leaves. As you can see, all of them they're looking beautiful. It's not too cold for them now. It's starting to come into spring, and they're responding. Looking really, really good. Now, I thought I might have lost some of them, but as you can see right there, I'm not sure if you read it in the camera, new leaves are coming up on even what look like dormant ones. Yeah, so I'm glad that they've responded well to the overwintering and the pruning, and I'm hoping for them to really bush up over the next few weeks and hopefully get my first harvest of them in mid-October. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate all the support. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment on this video or reach out to me via my socials, TikTok and Instagram. Thank you again for watching, and I hope to see you next one.